The whisper that changed everything came on the worst day of both their lives. As Sarah's designer heels slipped on the rain-slicked subway steps, she fell directly into the lap of a man who hadn't felt hope in 3 years. Neither knew that this awkward collision would heal wounds they'd both given up trying to mend. If you're enjoying this story of unexpected connection and second chances, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories that remind us how life's most beautiful moments often begin with accidents. Sarah Chen had never taken the subway before that rainy Tuesday in November. As the newly appointed CEO of Meridian Technologies, she typically traveled in sleek town cars with tinted windows that separated her from the world outside. At 38, she had everything society told her she should want: the corner office 60 floors above Manhattan, the wardrobe of tailored suits, and a reputation as the ice queen who turned failing companies into gold. What no one saw was how empty her penthouse felt each night, how the silence echoed with possibilities of a life she'd sacrificed for success. The board meeting that morning had gone catastrophically wrong. After presenting her vision for the company's future, a bold plan that would require short-term sacrifices for long-term growth, she'd watched the confidence drain from their faces. "Perhaps we made a mistake," the chairman had said, not quite meeting her eyes. "We'll reconvene next week to discuss the direction of leadership." The unspoken message was clear: prove yourself or pack your things. Walking out into the downpour, Sarah had impulsively dismissed her driver. She needed to think, to breathe, to escape the suffocating pressure. That's how she found herself descending into the subway system for the first time in 15 years, her Louboutins entirely wrong for the slippery stairs. Michael Reeves hadn't planned to be on that particular train either. His regular subway line was under maintenance, forcing him to take this unfamiliar route home after another exhausting day. At 42, his face carried the weathered lines of someone who had aged a decade in 3 years. Since losing his wife to cancer, he'd been barely treading water, working as an architectural draftsman by day and being both mother and father to his daughter Emma by night. Today had been especially brutal. His boss had pulled him aside to discuss his lack of focus and declining quality of work. Then the school had called. Emma was in trouble again, this time for getting into a shouting match with a teacher. At 12 years old, his once sweet daughter was becoming a stranger to him, her grief manifesting as anger that he didn't know how to handle. The school counselor's words still rang in his ears: "She needs stability, Mr. Reeves. She needs you to be present." As the train lurched to a stop at 42nd Street, Michael stared blankly at his reflection in the window, wondering how much more he could take before something inside him broke completely. That's when Sarah Chen, distracted by the email she was composing on her phone, misjudged the gap between platform and train. Her heel caught, sending her tumbling forward directly onto Michael's lap, her sleek briefcase clattering to the floor. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, mortified as she tried to right herself. Their eyes met for just a moment, her perfectly made-up face flushed with embarrassment, his tired eyes momentarily startled out of their dullness. "It's fine," he said automatically, helping steady her before returning his gaze to the window, too exhausted for social niceties. Sarah smoothed her skirt and took the seat beside him, noticing the architectural drawings partially visible in his open portfolio. Something about the precision of the lines caught her attention. They were beautiful but somehow sad, as though the buildings themselves carried the weight of their creators' emotions. "You're an architect?" she asked, surprising herself. Sarah Chen didn't make small talk with strangers on public transportation. She didn't make small talk at all. Michael glanced at her, then at his drawings. "Just a draftsman," he replied. "I design what other people tell me to design." Something in his tone resonated with her, the resignation, the sense of potential unfulfilled. Before she could respond, his phone rang. Sarah watched as his expression transformed from weariness to alarm. "Emma? Slow down, honey. What happened?" His voice dropped to a whisper. "No, don't touch anything. I'll be right there. Just sit tight." He hung up, his hands shaking slightly as he gathered his things. Is everything okay? Sarah found herself asking. Michael looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. My daughter. There's been a small fire in our apartment. She was trying to cook dinner and... He trailed off, the weight of one more crisis threatening to crush him. What stop? Sarah asked, her CEO voice taking over, the one that solved problems without hesitation. What? What stop is your apartment? 86th Street, but... That's where I'm headed, she lied smoothly. I'll come with you. Later, Sarah would wonder what possessed her to insert herself into a stranger's crisis. Perhaps it was the desperate need to focus on someone else's problems instead of her own. Perhaps it was the way his eyes had briefly lit up when discussing his drawings, a glimpse of passion buried under exhaustion. The apartment was filled with smoke but no actual flames. Emma, a gangly preteen with red-rimmed eyes and a defiant set to her jaw, had managed to extinguish the small stove fire herself but was sitting on the couch looking shell-shocked when they arrived. I was just trying to make dinner, she said, her voice small despite her attempt to sound tough. I thought I could surprise you. Sarah stood awkwardly in the doorway as Michael knelt before his daughter, checking her for injuries before pulling her into a fierce hug. The apartment told its own story, clean but sparse, with gaps on the walls where pictures had once hung. A home maintained by someone going through the motions of living without actually living. I can order food, Sarah offered, feeling strangely reluctant to leave. While you sort things out. Michael looked up, seeming to remember her presence. You don't have to. Pizza, Emma interrupted, studying Sarah with curious suspicion. If you're buying, we want pizza. And so Sarah Chen, CEO of Meridian Technologies, found herself sitting at a scratched kitchen table in a small Upper East Side apartment, eating pizza with a grieving single father and his angry daughter. The conversation was stilted at first, with Emma answering questions in monosyllables while shooting suspicious glances at the stranger in designer clothes who had inexplicably attached herself to their disaster. So you're like, what, Dad's girlfriend? Emma finally asked bluntly, causing Michael to choke on his water. Emma, he sputtered. I'm just someone who happened to be on the same train, Sarah replied calmly. And I know something about kitchen fires. I set my dorm room on fire trying to make ramen in college. Emma's eyes widened slightly. Really? Really? The fire department came and everything. My roommate didn't speak to me for a week. A tiny smile flickered across the girl's face before disappearing. Did your mom teach you to cook after that? The question was innocent but hit Sarah like a physical blow. No, she said softly. My mother died when I was about your age. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Emma studied her with new interest. Mine too. 3 years ago. Michael watched the exchange with a mixture of surprise and caution. It had been months since Emma had voluntarily mentioned her mother to anyone. It's the worst club to belong to, isn't it? Sarah said quietly. Emma nodded, her tough facade cracking just slightly. Dad tries, but he doesn't know how to do hair or anything. And he works all the time. Emma, that's not fair, Michael began, but Sarah interrupted. My dad was the same way, she said. He didn't know what to do with me after Mom died, so he just focused on work. I think it was easier than facing the empty house. Michael's eyes met hers across the table, a flash of recognition passing between them. She was describing his life exactly. As the evening progressed, something unexpected happened. They began to talk, really talk. Emma showed Sarah her science project, a solar system model that was half finished and due the next day. Michael revealed that he'd once dreamed of designing sustainable housing before settling for corporate architecture to pay the bills. Sarah found herself sharing stories about her own childhood, memories she hadn't revisited in years. When it was time to leave, Sarah hesitated at the door. Thank you for the pizza, she said awkwardly, suddenly aware that she had spent hours with these strangers when she should have been preparing for the most important presentation of her career. Thank you for coming to our rescue, Michael replied. It was nice not to handle a crisis alone for once. Dad, invite her to my science fair, Emma said suddenly. It's next Thursday. Michael looked embarrassed. I'm sure Ms. Chen is very busy. Sarah, she corrected. And I'd love to come. The word surprised her as much as them. Walking to the elevator, Sarah felt lighter than she had in years. She had completely forgotten about the board meeting, the ultimatum, the potential end of her career. For a few hours, she had just been a person connecting with other people. The next morning, staring at her closet full of identical power suits, Sarah made an impulsive decision. Instead of preparing counter-arguments for the board, she began sketching a completely new proposal. If she was going to lose this job anyway, she would go down fighting for something she actually believed in. The week that followed transformed all three of them. Sarah found herself texting Michael for updates on Emma's science project, which somehow led to discussions about his architectural dreams and her corporate dilemmas. She sent him drafts of her new proposal, he sent her sketches of buildings he designed in his spare time. Emma's science fair became a turning point. Standing beside Michael in the school gymnasium, watching Emma confidently explain her project to the judges, Sarah realized she had accidentally stumbled into belonging somewhere. When Emma won third place and immediately looked for both of them in the crowd, Sarah felt a surge of emotion she couldn't name. She's amazing, Sarah whispered to Michael as they applauded. She reminds me of her mother, he replied, his voice thick. Strong-willed, brilliant, fearless. Later, as they celebrated with ice cream, Emma asked the question that had been hovering between the adults. Are you guys dating or what? Because Zoe's dad started bringing this lady around and then they got married, and now she has to spend weekends at her dad's new house with his new family. Michael nearly dropped his spoon. Emma, that's not, we're friends, Sarah said firmly, meeting Emma's evaluating gaze. Is that okay with you? Emma considered this, licking her ice cream cone thoughtfully. I guess. As long as you don't try to act like my mom. I already had a mom, and she was perfect. I would never, Sarah promised. But I'd like to be your friend too, if you'll let me. The day of Sarah's board presentation arrived. She had barely slept, revising her proposal until dawn. This wasn't just about saving her job anymore, it was about creating something meaningful. Her new vision for Meridian Technologies included a foundation that would partner with schools in underserved communities to provide technology education and scholarships. Why this sudden interest in education? The chairman asked skeptically after she finished presenting. Sarah thought of Emma, of the potential she saw in that young girl, of all the children who might never get the chance to develop their gifts. Because technology without purpose is meaningless, she answered. We've been so focused on quarterly profits that we've forgotten why we started this company, to change lives through innovation. To her surprise, the board approved her plan with a 6-month probationary period. As she left the meeting, she immediately texted Michael, "They didn't fire me. Having dinner with us tonight?" Their relationship evolved slowly, cautiously. Michael was terrified of letting anyone new into their wounded family unit. Sarah was equally terrified of wanting something she couldn't control with spreadsheets and strategic planning. They circled each other carefully, building trust through small moments, helping Emma with homework, Sunday morning bagels in the park, quiet conversations after Emma went to bed. 3 months after their subway collision, they found themselves walking along the Hudson River at sunset. Emma was at a friend's birthday sleepover, giving them a rare evening alone. I have a confession, Michael said suddenly, stopping to face the water. That day on the subway, before you fell into my lap, I was thinking about giving up. Sarah turned to him, her breath catching. Giving up? He nodded, not meeting her eyes. Not anything drastic. Just I was thinking about moving us back to Ohio, where my parents live. Letting them help with Emma. Admitting I couldn't do this alone anymore. He finally looked at her. I felt like such a failure. Sarah reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. You're the furthest thing from a failure I've ever met, Michael Reeves. That day changed everything, he continued. Not just because you helped with the fire or because you somehow got Emma to talk about her mother. It was what you whispered to me, when we were standing in the kitchen and you thought I couldn't hear you. Sarah frowned, trying to remember. What did I say? You were watching me clean up the mess, and you whispered, "You're doing better than you think you are." No one had ever said that to me before. Everyone else was always telling me what I was doing wrong, how I was failing Emma. But you, a complete stranger, saw something different. Sarah remembered now. It had been an unconscious thought, spoken aloud without intention. I meant it, she said softly. You were drowning but still fighting so hard for her. That's not failure, Michael. That's the definition of strength. He turned to face her fully now. You know what's strange? That same day, I think I said something similar to you. Sarah smiled, remembering. In the elevator, when I was leaving. I mentioned my presentation, how I was probably going to lose my job, and you said. Sometimes the things we think are failures are actually redirections to where we're supposed to be, he finished. My wife used to say that. It was her favorite quote. It changed how I approached the board, Sarah admitted. Instead of fighting to keep my job, I started thinking about what kind of company I actually wanted to lead. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and pink. Sarah had never been one for romantic notions, but she couldn't deny the strange synchronicity that had brought them together at exactly the moment they both needed someone to see them clearly. I think I'm falling in love with you, Michael said quietly. And it terrifies me. Sarah felt her heart race. Because of Emma? Partly. And partly because I never thought I'd feel this way again after Caroline died. It feels like a betrayal sometimes. Sarah squeezed his hand. I'm scared too. I've spent my whole life avoiding exactly this, needing someone, caring this much. It's much safer to focus on quarterly reports and market projections. Safer, but lonely, he said. Very lonely, she agreed. Michael turned to face her. Emma asked me something interesting yesterday. She wanted to know if you made me happy. What did you tell her? I told her the truth. That you make me remember who I used to be, before grief took over my life. That when you're around, I can imagine a future again. He paused. She said that her mom would be okay with that. Sarah felt tears threatening. That's a pretty amazing kid you've got there. She likes you, you know. She told me you don't treat her like she's broken. Because she's not broken. She's just a girl who lost her mother too young. I know something about that. Michael reached up to brush a strand of hair from her face. So where do we go from here, CEO Chen? Sarah smiled. I think we keep doing what we've been doing. Taking it one day at a time. Building something solid and real, the three of us. I like the sound of that, he said, leaning in to kiss her softly. 6 months later, Sarah moved into their apartment. A year after that, Michael proposed on the same subway platform where they'd first met, with Emma holding a sign that read, "Say yes so we can be a real family already." 2 years to the day after Sarah fell into Michael's lap, they were married in a small ceremony in Central Park, with Emma serving as both flower girl and best daughter. Sarah's Education Foundation became Meridian's most successful initiative, eventually spinning off as its own nonprofit organization. Michael left his drafting job to start his own sustainable architecture firm, with Meridian as his first major client. Emma grew into a confident teenager who spoke openly about having 2 moms, one in heaven and one on earth. On quiet evenings, Sarah would sometimes think about how differently their lives might have turned out if she hadn't slipped on those subway stairs, if Michael had taken his usual train, if Emma hadn't tried to cook dinner that night. So many coincidences had aligned to bring them together at exactly the moment when they all needed healing.